ॐ आप्यायन्तु ममाङ्गानि वाक्प्राणश्चक्षुः श्रोत्रं मतो बलमिन्द्रियाणि च सर्वाणि सर्वं ब्रह्मोपनिषदं माहं ब्रह्म निराकुर्यां मा ब्रह्म निराकरोत् अनिराकरणमस्तु अनिराकरणं मे अस्तु तदात्मनि निरतेय उपनिषत्सु धर्माः ते मयि सन्तु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः अनन्तगुणपूर्णत्वाद् अगम्याय सुरैरपि सर्वेष्टदात्रे देवानां नमो नारायणाय ते. So, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to friends who who joined us today for the third session of Kena Upanishad. Uh, the third session has just been convened at very short notice, and I thank you all for making the effort to join us this afternoon. So, where are we? So, before we start, always worthwhile thinking about Rishi, Devata, and Chandas. So, Rishi for Talavakara Upanishad, which is also called Kena Upanishad, is Chaturmukha Brahma, Sadashiva, Parvati, Talavakara Rishi, and all the acharyas who given us the commentary on Talavakara Upanishad, which is also called as Kena Upanishad. So the Devata for this is Vishnu, Vishnu Namaka Paramatma. And Vishnu goes with infinite names, and one of the names that he celebrated is Vishnu. The other names which gives us an attribute about Paramatma is Hrishikesha, which is very relevant to this Upanishad. Kapila Namaka Paramatma, Aniruddha, and Gayatri. So there is a view that the first kanda of Talavakara Upanishad actually celebrates Gayatri. Yeah. Chandas. The chandas for Talavakara Upanishad or Kena Upanishad are Trishtup Chandas, which as we know has got 44 syllables, 11 syllables over 4 lines, making it 44. Anushtup Chandas, 32 syllables, 8 letters per line times 4 equals 32 syllables, and other chandas also. So primarily is Trishtup and Anushtup Chandas. Okay, so we should never forget to think about our Rishi, Devata, and Chandas of Talavakara Upanishad, which is part of the Samaveda. So, what is the very first verse of Kena Upanishad? Om Kene Shitam Patati Preshitam Manaha Kena Pranaha Pratamaha Preiti Yuktaha Kene Shitam Vacham Imam Vadanti Chakshuhu Shrotram Kavudevo Yunakti. So about a fortnight ago, we made an entry into the first mantra of the first kanda of Kena Upanishad. As you will see, the very first verse comes with a lot of questions. Kena, 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 Kavu. So that is why it is called Kena Upanishad popularly, because it starts with Kene Shitam. But if you are a purist, you have to say that this is called Talavakara Upanishad because it comes from the Talavakara Shake of Samaveda, and it has been maintained by the Talavakara Shake of the Samaveda. Okay, so that is the correct way of understanding this Upanishad. So, just a brief recap of what we were doing last time. Okay, so this is basically a fundamental question that Sadashiva is asking Chaturmukha Brahma. Where is he asking this question? Anybody wants to answer this? What is the background to Talavakara Upanishad? Where is Chaturmukha placed? Where is he in deep meditation? And where is Sadashiva going to ask this question? Anybody wants to take a quick answer to this? Where is Chaturmukha when he is being asked this question? No problem. So our Acharya tells us that Chaturmukha was in silent contemplation in Vaijayanta peak of Meru Parvata or Meru mountain, and Sadashiva approaches him with a question. So he asks him this question. And whilst we were discussing, Anandji, Devalji and Pratibhaji also came up with a very interesting stuff. They had explored where in Gita also the word Kena comes in. So the Kena comes in Gita also. So who wants to recite this? 336, where the same Keneshitam patati preshitam manaha. The similar kena comes in Gita 336. Who wants to recite it? Perhaps maybe Anand or Deval or Pratibha. One of you could take this up. Anand, go for it.
अर्जुन उवाच अथ केन प्रयुक्तोऽयम् पापं चरति पूरुषः अनिच्छन्नपि वार्ष्णेय बलादिव नियोजितः.
Thank you very much, Anandji. Very beautifully recited. Atakena prayuktoyam. So Kena comes there also, and also Ramesh ji also had reminded us that the word Kena also comes in Srimad Bhagavatam also. So thank you to Anand, and also thanks to Ramesh ji as well for reminding us that the Kena also comes in Bhagavatam also. So what is the basic question that Sadashiva asked Chaturmukha Brahma in the Vaijayanta mountain? He asked the very basic question. What is this body? Why does it function like this? Who made it to function like this? So these are all basic questions. Of course, none of us ask these questions, but we run around owning, pretending that we own this body, and we use, and most of the time we abuse it. But we don't ask the core philosophical question about what is this body? Why does it function like this? Who made it to function like this? If we start asking this question, then our philosophical journey actually begins. Okay, so that is the key message of this Upanishad is ask, look at yourself and ask philosophical question. So synthesizing the biological evidence and arguments for the existence of the supersensory force, that something that is beyond us exists can be inferred to some extent by actually looking at this body of ours, which we call as sadhana sharira. So this is exactly what Sadashiva is asking, isn't it? So last time when we kind of started this chintana, we touched upon the three approaches to this verse. Om Keneshitam Patati Preshitam Manaha. The first one is about the mind. How does the mind function? Kena Pranaha Pratamaha Preti Yuktaha. Pratamaha Pranaha we understood either as the first breath or the vital breath. How does it function? Keneshitam Vacham, the speech. How does it speak? Chakshuhu Shrotram. Kavudevo Yunakti. How does this hearing and these eyes, how do they function? Is this all natural process? It is just evolutionary things that these eyes have evolved, the ears have evolved, or there is something more to it? Is a question that Sadashiva poses on our behalf, and also for him to get extra knowledge, to firm up his knowledge, to get new ideas, to firm up his knowledge, and also for our benefit. So there are three reasons why Sadashiva asked Chaturmukha, and Raghavendra Tirtha gives us that answer to us. One is to firm up his knowledge. The other one is every time we read the Vedas, we should get more and more detailed knowledge. So to get additional knowledge, Chaturmukha is asking, Sadashiva is asking. And the third one, of course, is the benefit of all the Sattvika Jivas that are out there that are desperate for salvation. So we also understood three different approaches to this verse. The first one is why these sense organs have been discussed, not others. There we understood that the mind is the internal, the breath is internal and external because it breathes in and out. Then Vacham is external, eyes and ears are internal. So there are various sense organs, external facing, external internal, and primarily internal. So mind is an internal sense organ, whereas the speech, eyes and ears are external sense organs. The breath is in and out, so inside and outside. So that is one interesting view of looking at this. Then the list also includes those essential for spiritual progress. So, what are those? Speech, eyes, and ears are essential for our spiritual progress, and the mind is also essential for our spiritual progress. The vital breath, if you don't have, if you don't have metabolism in your body, the body is not going to function. That means the sense organs are not going to function. You're not going to make any spiritual progress. Okay. Then, of course, there is this specific order in which Shiva asks this question is also interesting, and our gurus teach us this, that the specific order reminds the appearance of us in sadhana sharira. When we are born, how is our sequence? When the egg and the sperm has fertilized and the embryo is born, embryo then grows and then it achieves viability, and then it starts developing, the brain starts developing, it has the capacity to think in utero, and then it traces the sequence in which the mantra is based. It traces how we are born. In the womb, we are thinking about our past lives and we are ruminating, and then we are actually thinking, look, I'm coming back to this world. I should never ever come back again. I should do proper sadhana and should never come back again, is what the mind is thinking before birth, says our Shastras. And then the due date happens, and the delivery happens, and the baby comes out. When it comes out, what does it do? Pratamaha pranaha. The first thing that it does is it takes a breath. And then what it does, keneshitam vacham, then it cries. Then what it happens, it sees its mother. Then it starts hearing the external world, and then it goes through its samsara. So that is you and me, is how we conduct our samsara afterwards. So it very beautifully captures this particular verse. So we looked at this couple of weeks ago. Okay, so here a little bit more of an expansion of what we discussed. Kena ishitam. Ishitam means ishtam. Preshitam means preritam. Patati means gachati, goes. Yuktaha means yunakti, yunaktaha. Yeah, yukti, yunakti. Okay, so what does it mean? Again, this is just a recap to get us into bearing again. Under whose icha, ishitam. Under whose icha, preshitam, preritam, under whose command and control. So that is exactly is the meaning there. Under whose icha or desire, and under whose command or control does the mind moves towards the good objects and falls to bad ideas. Good objects is shreyas, falling to bad ideas is preyas, as taught to us in Katha Upanishad. So Shiva is asking, the Mano Abhimani is asking this question, under whose icha and command is it moving? So thereby Shiva himself pointing out that he is not an independent being. He is also under control of something else. So he wants that extra information about the glory of that being that controls the mind. So that is the primary meaning of the first line. Icha and command. Kena pranaha pratamaha peitiyuktaha, under whose icha and command and control, prana, the foremost of all. That is, pratamaha pranaha there means the first prana or the mukhya prana. The foremost of all is prompted to do activities. Who directs people to speak the words? Both the mundane and Veda. We speak, and last time we looked at how that physiology of speech happens, and it is profoundly philosophical that we are actually able to speak. Okay, we don't think about how do we speak, why do we speak, why is it that it is like this. And Shiva is asking, who directs people to speak the words, both mundane and the deeply philosophical? Who directs the eyes and ears to grasp the external world? Okay, so the question really that Shiva is asking is, we are mere spectators. That is a fact. We see through our ears, we hear through our ears, we think through our mind. We are not the mind, we are not the ears, we are not the eyes. We use this as an instrument and we are mere spectators. It's like us how going to a movie and looking at going to a cinema theater and looking at the movies is what our gurus give us as an example. We are just mere spectators. We are only using the instruments provided to us. Yet we think that we own this. We, of course, did not make any of this, and that is also a fundamental position. We never made any of this. We did not decide how our embryo, how we as embryos grow. It just happened, and we were totally out of control. That how our fertilization happened, and how we became an embryo, and how we became a baby, and how we got delivered. We just don't know. We are not in control of any of this. So that is the philosophy that Shiva wants us to ask. But of course, 99.99% of all of us don't ask this question. What makes the sense organs move towards the sense objects? Do they move on their own accord as the materialist? Are they prompted by the soul? Taking the example from the Katha Upanishad that we are all very familiar with. Are they prompted by the Abhimani Devatas? Is it the Mukhya Prana who controls all the Tattva Abhimani Devatas who prompts? Or are they all, that is the Jiva, the Abhimani Devata, the Mukhya Prana, even the matter, Are they all prompted by an entity that controls all of the above? So that is the question. Okay? And Shiva wants us to dissect this question out and ask this very carefully. Okay, so here I just put this this particular verse 8:12 and 8:4 for our contemplation, because in Gita Krishna is reminding us that when you read the Vedas, you have to look at this from Adi Bhuta perspective, Adi Deva perspective, and Adi Yajna perspective. Any verse of the Vedas needs to be looked at that, and that is exactly what we are doing for this particular verse. Anybody wants to recite 8:4 or even 8:1 and 2 and 8:4? So who wants to take up 8:1 and 2, please? And the same friend can also recite 8:4. Anybody wants to do that? So no problem. So Arjuna Uvacha. So in 8, Anand, go for it. Yeah, thank you.
अर्जुन उवाच किं तद्ब्रह्म किमध्यात्मम् किं कर्म पुरुषोत्तम अधिभूतं च किं प्रोक्तम् अधिदैवं किमुच्यते अधियज्ञकथं कोत्र देहेऽस्मिन् मधुसूदन प्रयाणकाले च कथं ज्ञेयोऽसि नियतात्मभिः अधिभूतं क्षरो भावः पुरुषश्चादिदैवतम् अधियज्ञोऽहमेवात्र देहे देहभृतां वर.
Beautiful, Anandji. So well, so beautifully recited. So Arjuna has asked this question: what is Adibhuta? What is Adideva? What is Adiyajna? And so on. And Krishna is giving them: this is Adibhutam, this is Adidevam, this is Adiyajna. Okay, that exactly is the approach of the first verse as to how we understand the philosophy. This is Krishna putting Krishna's message into practical application in the first verse. Adi bhutas. Bhutas are these panchabhutas, right? And things that have come out of panchabhutas. This body with external eyes and so on. So that is the first approach. Do they move on their own accord? Is it just this body that is moving? Are they prompted by Abhimani Devatas, for example? Adi Devam. Adi Yajna is the ultimate answer to all this. Yagno vai Vishnuhu, as you know from our Ishavasya Upanishad. So whether that Yajna is everything talking about that Yajna. So Adi Bhuta, Adi Deva, Adi Yajna. You also have Adi Atma, Adhyatma. Adi Atma also you can take it as the Jiva there. Yeah. So, do they move on their own accord? We looked at this last time. No, the sense organs do not move on their own accord. The primary, that is, if you think that the material body, the eyes of the material body spontaneously moves to this object, that cannot be. The mind, which is made up of matter, cannot spontaneously move towards the sense objects. It is not possible. Why? Because they are all made of matter or jada or insentient things. So we understood last time that insentient things are not capable of self-initiated action. Okay, this is one of the core philosophy of Badarayana. Rachana anupapatteshta na anumanam. Okay, so matter is not capable of self-initiated action. Okay, if you, I would humbly submit that we contemplate on this idea very carefully. When we do that, then you know that there is a supersensory force beyond all this. That everything is not just material, because a stone cannot spontaneously become an artifact. Yeah. So we also looked about the William Paley's watchmaker theory as well. You keep a piece of metal, it cannot spontaneously become a watch. Somebody has to make a watch. So these are all basic ideas, because Jada cannot have a self-initiated action. Okay. Is it the jiva, the sentient then? If you say it is not the jada, is it the jiva that is inside this body that is actually prompting the mind to do stuff, prompting the speech and the shotram and chakshu? Feels so when you look at the Katha Upanishad metaphor, right? Atmanam Ratinam Vidhi. Yeah. So you can think about it, but then Bharadwaja Mandala Rigveda actually gives an answer there. Okay. Vime karana tapayato vichakshurvidam jyotir hrudaya ahitam yat vime manascharati duradi kim savid vakshami kimunu manushye. Bharadwaja Rishi has thought about this problem several eons ago and documented in the Rig Veda. What did he say? My ears moves, my eyes too, the vision of light harboring from the heart, my mind which moves to great distance. I am not able to control it. What shall I say? What shall I understand? I am not able to control this. If I were in control, then I would always be going towards Shreyas. But I can't do it. This is a practical experience for all of us. We think we are in control of our mind, but actually we don't. The mind goes astray all the time. That is a standing example as to why we actually cannot control our mind. So, as I said before, the mind does not think, the eyes does not see, ears does not hear, organ of speech does not speak. We use these as instruments. So if jiva actually is not control of these sense organs, so that is the philosophy there. We think we are in control, but actually we are not. If we are in control, we will be always going towards Shreyas. But that is not what is happening. That itself is telling us there is something else that is going on here, that even the jivas are not able to control these sense organs. So then the next question is, do sentience higher than the jivas then control the indriyas? That is the next level of thinking that we should contemplate here. The concepts of Abhimani Devatas. A very, very, very important concept of the Vedas. Say, for example, everywhere in the Vedas, you would see many of these statements. Mruda Bravit Shatapata Brahmanam. Apo Abruvan Shatapata Brahmanam. Ta Apa Aikshanta Chandogya Upanishad. Tat Teja Aikshata Chandogya Upanishad. What does it mean? The mud spoke. The water spoke. The water saw. Fire saw. Okay. And we all know if it is just the mud will never speak. Water will never speak. Apaha never will see. Agni, the material fire, will never see. Okay. So there is an inner meaning with the language of the Vedas. This is where our Tathagatas or the Buddhists fell down. Because they said, oh, look at your Vedas, they have all these nonsensical statements like Mruda Bravit, Apaho Abruvan. How can the mud speak? So Vedas are nonsense, is what the Tathagatas said. The reason is, unfortunately, they do not actually know the Vedic concepts of Abhimani Devatas. If they had known, they would never make those statements. But that is their problem. Okay. Yaha pruthivyam tishtan, yaha apsu tishtan, ya agnau tishtan, ya antarikshe tishtan, ya vayo tishtan. Yeah, they're all various material entities. Tishtan. But underlying this is the Vedic concept of Abhimani Devatas, which is very, very foundational in Vedic philosophy. Antaryami Brahmanam talks about this. If you look at Chandogya Upanishad, second example, Ima Somya Nadyaha Purastat Prachya Syandante Paschat Pratishtaha Taha Samudrat Samudrameva Apiyanti Sa Samudra Eva Bhavati Ta Tata Tatra Naviduhu Ayamahamasmi Iti. So all these words, the nadis there is not the material nadi, but actually it is the Abhimani Devata. When I say Ganga, I don't mean the water Ganga. I talk about the Ganga, the Devati, the Devata Ganga. So that is what Veda Vyasa has told us. It is a very, very, very important formula. Abhimani Vyapadeshastu Visesha Anugatibhyam. Wherever Veda mentions a word that appears to indicate a jada, the underlying Abhimani Devata should be understood as the true meaning. Okay? If we don't do this, then we have not understood the Vedas. So this is another important formula that Veda Vyasa does. So we have to apply this formula here. You said the Abhimani Devatas that control the Jivas that actually moves things forwards. So what are all the Abhimani Devatas? So if you look at the mind, we know there are many Abhimani Devatas. We have done this so many times in our satsang, but never miss an opportunity to revise. So the Abhimani of the Manas, Garuda, Sesha, Rudra. So here Rudra Sadashiva is asking that question to Chaturmukha. But it is not just a Garuda, Sesha, Rudra. There are so many Abhimanis discussed in the Vedas. Okay, so many Abhimanis, and we just need to contemplate here. Who are those? Indra, Kama, Brihaspati, Chandra, Parvati, Brahma, Lakshmi. They are all Abhimanis of the Manas. Here I have a very quick question. Chandra as the Abhimani of the Manas. Where in the Purusha Shukta is Chandra taken as the Abhimani of the Manas? Who wants to recite that verse of Purusha Shukta? Quick quiz.
चंद्रमा मनसो जातः सक्षो सूर्यो अजायत.
Beautiful, Sudarshan. Very well done. So, Purusha Shukta actually gives the answer as Sudarshan so beautifully recited. Chandrama manaso jataha. From the mind of Brahman, Chandra came. So, that is why Chandra is also Abhimani of the Manas. But it is not just Chandra. There are so many other chaps also. Garuda, Sesha, Rudra, Indra, Tama. So, that is beautiful. And as Sudarshan was reciting, eyes. Eyes, the Abhimani of the eyes is Surya. The Abhimani of the hearing is interesting. The Abhimani of the hearing is Chandra. Chandra is not only of the mind, but he is also Abhimani of the hearing. Okay, and also the presiding deities of direction. So, who wants to tell us here why is the presiding deities of directions are also Abhimanis of hearing? Any takers on this? So, there are how many directions? Our Vedas are pretty good at this. They talk about Uttara. So, Uttara, Dakshina. Purva, Paschima, Ishanya, Nairati, Agneya, Vayavya. So each direction has got an Abhimani in the Vedic. This Kubera, Ishana, Indra, Agni, Yama, Nirrati, Varuna, Vayu. Okay. So these Abhimanis of the direction are also the Abhimanis of hearing. Anybody wants to have a view on why they are the Abhimanis of hearing? This is the beauty of our Vedas.
Sound travels in all directions.
Beautiful, Devalji. Fantastic time. Sound travels in all directions. Anand?
It's the same. The sound travels in all the directions.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So that's why the Abhimanis of all the directions are also the Abhimani of the hearing. So very, very beautiful. Yeah. So then you have speech. Agni, Saraswati, Bharati, Parvati. So they are all Abhimanis of speech starting from Agni upwards. Okay. Taste is Varuna, but that we are not interested in this. Remember, we are talking about these Indriyas that help us for spiritual progression. Eating food and getting taste does not help us in spiritual progression. In fact, we have to control this. So yeah, Agni, Rudra, Surya, Chandra all help us in our progress, in our spiritual progress. So the question here is, so first we said material eyes cannot spontaneously work because they are jada. The next one is Jiva cannot be controlling this because Jiva is not an independent entity. He is not able to control anything. Otherwise, he will be doing lots of good things, says Bharadwaja Rishi in Rig Veda. So from that we understood that the Jivas are not. Then the third level of thinking about this are the Abhimani Devatas now controlling these Indriyas. Okay. So who are these Abhimani Devatas? Agni, Garuda, etc., Surya, Chandra, and all the direction. Okay. But the problem there is even these guys are not independent. Okay. Shiva himself is asking this question, as Shiva himself knows that he is not an independent being. Okay. So we all know that one of the highest Vaishnava is Shiva. He knows that he is not an independent being. That is why he started asking this question to the Rijugana Devata, Chaturmukha Brahma. So the next question is, Shiva is asking this question to who? He is asking this question to Chaturmukha Brahma, who is, as you know, is part of the Rijuganas, Riju category of souls, who are the highest among Jivas. So what about the highest among Jivas? If these Tattvabhimani Devatas don't control, is it the highest among Jivas that controls all these sense organs? So what I'm trying to impress upon you is the levels, the layers in which this mantra opens up so that we can do Adi Bhuta, Adi Atma, Adi Deva, Adi Yajna kind of interpretations of what this Vedic mantra is actually telling us. So what about the highest among Jivas? And we all know that the highest among Jivas, certainly as described in the Upanishad, is the Prana Tattva. The prana that comes everywhere in the Upanishad. So the next 5-10 minutes, let's have a quick overview of prana, because that when we understand this, then we will understand why that Pratamaha Pranaha has he said. Why Shiva has asked in the second line, Kene Shitam Kena pratamaha pranaha praiti yuktaha is the next line. Why did he ask that? He asked you, we will be able to appreciate the second line when we understand who is this prana. So we understood prana means it could be gross respiration, that is in and out. Okay, or it could be oxidative phosphorylation or metabolic respiration, which makes all this energy which drives this body. The energy that drives the body is called the prana. Or it can be the pranamaya kosha, which the bodies have, which is nothing but the energy kosha. The key there is, if the prana is gone, if this stops working, all other systems of the body stop working. We call that person as dead because his prana is gone. So that is why that question is coming. Is it the prana that controls the the functions of all others? Is he the one that controls your mind, your eyes, your nose, etc.? Is the question there. Who controls this vital body? Yes, we know it is the prana. And we know again, I'm never tired of bringing this up. Prana of the Prashna Upanishad. That is the beautiful question. Is Atahi enam bhargavo vaidharbihi paprascha bhagavan katyeva devaha prajam vidarayante katara etat prakashante kaha punaresham varishtaha iti. That is the question he asked Bhargava Vaidarbhihi to Pippala the Rishi. In the second question, what did he ask? Who is the highest among these devatas? So our Pippalada gave a story there, not a story, an incident there, where all these Tattvabhimani devatas, Rudra, Surya, Agni, Chandra, they are all having a conversation. And Mukhya Prana said, Tan Varishtaha Prana Uvacha. Okay. And then there was an explanation there, if you can remember, the Tadyata, Mashika, Madhukara Raja, Utkramantam, Sarva Eva Utkramante, Tasminsta Pratishtamane, Sarva Eva Pratishtanta, Evang. This is important. Evam, Vang, Manas, Chakshuhu, Shrotram, Chate Pritaha, Pranam, Stunvanti. So, Evam, Vak, Agni, Manas, Rudra, Chakshush, Surya, Shotra, Chandra. So all these guys then understood like how when the queen bee goes out, all other bees goes out of the beehive. When the queen bee comes back, all other bees comes back. Similarly is the state of all these Tattvabhimani devatas, Vak, Manas, Chakshu, Shrotra, the guys who have been discussed in the very first mantra of the Keno Upanishad. So when prana left, all these guys had to leave the body. When prana came, all these guys had to come into the body. And these Tattvabhimani devatas realized that, and then they started the Vayustuti, the original Vayustuti of the Vedas, in 9 mantras praising this Prana Tattva in the Prashna Upanishad. Yeah. So go back and kind of look at this, because the glories of prana is described everywhere in the Prashna Upanishad, and this particular line is very relevant to our Keno Upanishad. So I thought we should bring this back and link up Prashna Upanishad with Keno Upanishad. Ara iva ratanabho prane sarvam pratishtitam. So this prana is like this ratanabho. This is the one that holds the whole chariot, which is the body, together. If this guy is gone, the whole chariot falls down. And the same verses also come in Mundaka Upanishad, if you may remember. Araiva ratanabhav sammata yatra nadyaha. Okay. So prana is everywhere in the Upanishad. And the prana is the highest among the Tattvabhimani devatas, says the Vedas. So the question here is it the prana that controls all the indriyas? Same issue comes in Chandogya Upanishad as well. Ataha prana uchikramishante yatas. Same situation, where if the prana goes, everybody else goes. Same discussion in Chandogya Upanishad as well. Evameva ayam asmin sharire prano yuktaha. Chandogya Upanishad. This is the one that holds this body together. The question is, who is controlling this? Prana is what the discussion here is, because even the Mukhya Prana himself, although he is the highest among the Tattvabhimani devatas, Sadly, he is also not independent. He is also a dependent entity. Yeah. So here is the synthesis of this argument. Evidence from the Upanishads show that prana controls the devatas. So then the question is it the prana that directs and controls our sense organs? But jiva, indriya, abhimani devatas and prana are not independent. They are dependent. Okay. The question there is, are they independent or dependent? They are dependent. Why? Because they're prompted by an entity that controls all the above. Why is that? So this is a key concept of Vedic philosophy of independence and dependence. Okay. So there is a similar concept in Western philosophy. The guy who propounded that is called Spinoza. Okay. He speaks about an independent entity as res completa. Res completa in Western philosophy is the independent being. And of course, he talks about the res completa is God himself and so on. So there is a Western philosophical concept propounded by Spinoza who talks about independence. Of course, our philosophers have defined all this eternally. We knew all this long before Spinoza came along. So here is a thing for us to think about, and profound philosophy, of course, that we need to think about, because then that will take you to Paramatma. What is the definition of dependence and independence? How do we define independence? Okay, so this is a key deep idea that we need to think about, that Jayatirtha tells us. Swarupa pravriti, swarupa pramiti pravriti lakshana satta traividye para anapeksham swatantram tad apeksham aswatantram. So what is swatantra or res completa? An independent principle is that which does not depend, it does not depend on any other principle for its essential nature, its power of functioning or becoming known, or the power to act. Everything in the universe falls within these categories if you think about this very, very deeply. Essential nature, its power to function, that is called pravriti, becoming known, pramiti. Okay. So all these things, that entity which does on its own is swatantra. Whereas a paratantra is an entity that is dependent on another for these. What are these? Essential nature, their power of functioning or becoming known, or the power to act. Okay, so that is why our Acharya and Tattva Sankhyanā said, Swatantram aswatantram cha dvividam tattvam ishyate swatantro bhagavan Vishnuhu. Vishnu alone is independent. All others are dependent on him. For what? For their nature, for their ability to know or becoming known, and their ability to act. All other entities, that is you, me, the Tattva Bhimani Devatas, and all the Jadas are dependent on this independent Paramatma. So that is a key idea, that is what our Rudra is prompting us to think about by putting this basic question. Similar, that is exactly what Katha Upanishad was talking about. You may remember, but worth going through this. Indriyebhyah parahi artha, artebhyashcha param manaha, manasastu para buddhi, buddher atma mahan paraha, mahatah param avyaktam, avyaktat purusha paraha, Purushan na param kinchit sakashta saparagatihi. And the same Katha Upanishad says, who is that paragati? Tad Vishnoho paramam padam. Okay. So if you look at this verse from Adibhuta, Adideva, and then Adi Yajna perspective, you will understand, when you put the Abhimani Devatas of each verse, you will understand how the Vedic pantheon flows beautifully. Okay. Here is a very important Rig Veda mantra that that we have to think about in this context, that our gurus teach us, because this is what it is all about. The Rig Veda mantra, 10th mandala, Kshudra Mahasukta mandala. It makes a beautiful statement. Vishusi the Ganapate Guneshu Tvam Ahur Vipratamam Kavinam narute tvat kriyate kinchanare mahamarkam magavan chitramarcha. The words of the Rig Veda. Okay. So look at that word Ganapate. So that Ganapate does not mean the Ganapati, the ones that the elephant-headed god that some people think. No, Ganapati is whom? We have done this so many times. So again, this Rigveda mantra says these Ganas. What are the Ganas that this Rigveda mantra is talking about? The Ganas of Tattvabhimani Devatas. The group of Tattvabhimani Devatas, or Gana means what? Gana means a group. Who is the head or the master of this Gana? He is called Ganapati. So, Nishusida Ganapate Guneshu Tvamahur Vipratamam Kavinam Narate Tvatkriyate Kinchanare Mahamarkam Magavan Chitramarcha. O Lord of the group of senses. Lord of the group of senses means the Abhimani Devatas. May your propelling presence be in our group of senses. It is said that you are the foremost among the enlightened ones. Without you, nothing happens, afar or near. O generous one, you are extraordinary and great. I sing the hymn in praise of you, says the Kshudra Mahasukta Mandala of the 10th Mandala of the Rig Veda. That gives us the answer that it is not the Abhimani Devatas that control, because all these Abhimani Ganas has got a Pati. Okay, so that Pati is what is described in Katha Upanishad as Vishnu. Tad Vishnoho Paramam Padam. So that is the philosophy of this first verse that we are talking about. Om Keneshitam Patati Preshitam Manaha Kena Pranaha Pratamaha Preiti Yuktaha Keneshitam Vacham Imam Vadanti Chakshuhu Shrotram. And then if you look at the last line, there itself Sadashiva is given the answer. Kavu Devo Yunakti. Deva, he said, Kavu Devo Yunakti. Under whose command? The command and the direction. Yunakti means command or direction. That Deva, Kavu Devo Yunakti. How is that controllership? Describe to me about that controllership of that Supreme Paramatma who is controlling all these ganas. That is the question that Sadashiva is asking here. Tell me more about that independent principle that controls everything in the universe. I want to know about this. Yeah. So look at the word Deva. Deva means divine, right? And we have done this before. It's got several meanings. Divu Kridayam, Divu Vijikishayam, Divu Vyavahare, Divu Dyuti, Divu Stuti, Divu Kanti, Divu Gati. These are all the etymology of Deva. Of course, the English word divine comes from Deva. They're always good at nicking our Sanskrit words, and they've nicked this one also. Divine comes from Deva. Here you should take Divu Kridayam, creation. How does he create this? How does he control this? The Deva. Tell me more about that. Tell me about that cosmic force that motivates everything. That is what Sadashiva is asking Chaturmukha Brahma. That is the question he is asking. It is not said that Sadashiva does not know that there is this Antaryamin inside him who controls him. He wants to know more about him. He knows, but as I said, there are three reasons why he is approached. One is to revise and to firm up his knowledge, and to have further clarity of the knowledge that he has, and also for the benefit of all the Satvika Jivas who want to attain salvation. He asks this question about, O Chaturmukha Brahma, tell me about that cosmic force that motivates everything. Immediately our Chaturmukha Brahma answers that beautiful question of Sadashiva. Sadashiva in Kena Upanishad, he puts one question. Okay, the rest of the Upanishad, the third up to third kanda, the whole of the first kanda, the second kanda, and up to the third kanda, Chaturmukha Brahma gets so happy that he goes on and on describing this Vishnu Tattva that Chaturmukha Brahma talks about the greatness of this in the rest of the Kena Upanishad. Okay. How does and the background to how Chaturmukha Brahma answers this question is also important. As I told you, Chaturmukha Brahma is in contemplation in the Meru mountain in the Vaijayanta Parvata. The peak of the Vaijayanta, he is in contemplation of whom? Contemplation of Narayana. He is constantly contemplating on Narayana. Sadashiva is asking this question. So he is thinking about the Narayana and then he is now answering to Sadashiva. What did he answer that as? This is what we are going to be discussing. Again, it's a very complex verse and we need to dissect it out very, very carefully. Let's see how much we do over the next 10-15 minutes. So what did Chaturmukha then say? Shrotrasya shrotram manasa mano yadvachoha vacham savupranasya pranaha chakshushash chakshuhu atimuchya dhiraha pretya asmat lokat amruta bhavanti. That is what Chaturmukha Brahma said. What was the first verse? Keneshitam patati preshitam manaha kena pranaha pratamaha preiti yuktaha keneshitam vacham imam vadanti chakshushrotram kavudevo yunakti is what Sadashiva asked and Chaturmukha replied to him, this is the answer. Shrotrasya shrotram manasa mano yad vachaha vacham savu pranasya pranaha chakshushash chakshuhu atimuchya dhiraha pretya asmat lokad amruta bhavat. Okay, so let's look at this. So this verse is also in Trishtub. Okay, but it's got 45 syllables. So if you remember the first mantra also was in Trishtub, but it had 45 syllables, with the first line having 12 syllables. The second, third and the fourth had 11 each, making it 45. Whereas the second mantra also has 45, which, as you know, last time we did this chandas, right? It's called Burik Trishtup. Okay, when it has 45, it's called Burik Trishtup. So here the second line has got 12 syllables. The first line has got 11 syllables. The third and the fourth have 11 syllables. And there are secret philosophy there. 9 times 5 is 45. 9 is Prano Bruhati. Okay, 9. So if you think about Bruhati Chandas, Brihati Chandas is what? Brihati Chandas has got 36 syllables. 9 in each line times 4 becomes 36. And Aitareya Upanishad says Prano Bruhati. Okay, Chaturmukha Prana or Chaturmukha Prana are all, as I told you before, they are the Rujuganas. So Prano Bruhati. So now in that same Prano Bruhati, who is Chaturmukha, answers that to Rudra. So that is the beauty of understanding the secret philosophy of the number of syllables. Burik Trashtub here. So this Chaturmukha is now answering to Sadashiva. So even before we go into the philosophy of it, if you think about the order in which Chaturmukha has based this answer, that itself is philosophically very profound. So if you look at the first verse, what was the order? The first was mind, the next was the vital breath, the third was the organ of speech, the fourth was the organ of hearing, and the fifth was the organ of seeing. It is in that order Sadashiva asked the question. Whereas our Chaturmukha answers the question in a slightly different order. So these are all the nuances of understanding this mantra even before we understand the deeper meanings of this. Why this order in contrast to the first mantra? So that itself we need to see that now. Okay. So for us to do sadhana, so for us to make philosophical progress, what do we have to do? Very easy, right? We have to study the scriptures. Then we have to go into meditation. Atma va are drashtavyaha, shrotavyo mantavyo, nitidyasitavyaha maitreti. That is the sequence for us. Yeah. So to study the scriptures, what do you have to do? You have to do swadhyaya and we have to do pravachana. There are two aspects to it, right? Swadhyaya and pravachana. Swadhyaya means what? Listening to a guru is swadhyaya. Pravachana is what? Swapravachana, parapravachana. Parapravachana means we are saying something to somebody else. Swapravachana means we are telling it to ourselves. That is, we are internally contemplating, ruminating and constantly telling ourselves, revising or manana. Okay? Swapravachana is actually manana. Parapravachana is saying something through our walk. Okay? Meditation. So then we go into meditation right after we have done the scriptures. Meditation has got two components, dharana and samadhi. Dharana is what? Controlling your breath. in and out. Pranayama, that is the dharana. And when you start off with pranayama, then you control your breath, control your mind, make your mind still, then you go into samadhi. So that is the sequence. Samadhi, that is asamprajnata samadhi, where you have the God vision. Okay. So that exactly is the reason why this particular verse is sequenced like this. Shrotrasya Shrotram. Ear of the ear. Shrotra means listening. Swadhyaya, listening to a guru. Manaso Mano, mind. Swapravachana, manana. Vachoha Vacham, Vacha, speech. Parapravachana. Okay. Pranasya pranaha, pranayama, dharana is number 4. And when you do this, order 1, 2, 3 and 4, listening to a guru, doing manana, teaching this to somebody else, going into deep meditation, starting off with meditation, and going into deep meditation, what happens at the fifth stage? Chakshushas chakshuhu, you see. See what? Not donkey or monkey. You see Paramatma, God vision. So that is the sequence. 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 5 is the reason why you have this sequence here. Shrotrasya Shrotram, Manasa Mano, Vachaha Vacham, Savupranasya Pranaha, Chakshushas Chakshuhu. Okay. So that is one of the beauty of understanding the why this has been set in this sequence is what we get taught by our gurus. We will never find it in any superficial transliterations of Kena Upanishad. We have to have a Guru Mukha and learn this and pass it on to the next generation as to understanding the deeper philosophy of every mantra of Kena Upanishad. So that is the background to this. Bhurik Trishtup is the Chandas, and the sequence is for the sadhana of a Satvika Jiva to understand the deeper rules of who is this Deva, who and how does he control everything. So what did Chaturmukha then say? You know, that being, the Deva who is Shotrasya Shotram, he is the ear of the ear. Manaso Mano, he is the mind of the mind. Vachoha Vacham, he is the speech of the speech. Pranasya Pranaha, he is the vital force of the vital force. Chakshushas Chakshuhu, he is the eyes of the eye. Okay? So that is the language that Chaturmukha Brahma uses to answer this question, which is quite enigmatic. Yeah, it's very cryptic. What is this ear of the ear, mind of the mind, speech of the speech, vital force of the vital force, eyes of the eyes? What does it actually mean? So Raghavendra Tirtha in his Kandatra gives us a guidance as to how do we understand this. Shrotrasya Shrotram Shravana Shakti Pradaha, the giver of the power of hearing to the ears. Okay? And of course, we don't think about this problem. We just hear some music and it goes through our ears and we hear. Okay, but how does this happen? Who gave the power to the sense organs? Who gave that power to the Chandra, who is the Abhimani to the sense organs, to actually make this happen to us and so that we experience this hearing? Even the mere experience of hearing, although physiologically it's quite profound, philosophically it's even profound. How does this happen? Why do we hear? Okay. So Shrotrasya Shrotram, Shravana Shakti Pradaha, that being that gives the power of hearing to the ears. Manasa Mano, Manana Shakti Pradaha, the giver of power of thinking to the mind and the giver of the power to Rudra so that he can do that function of looking after the mind. That is why he is called Manasa Mano. Vachoha Vacham, the giver of the power of talk to the speech and also to Agni. Vak Ucharana Shakti Pradaha. We just speak. But how does this whole thing happen? Who controls this? Why does it happen like this? Who made it so? If we start asking that question, then we will understand that Vachoha Vacham is that Deva, the giver of the power of talk to the speech. Chakshushas Chakshuhu, Darshana Shakti Pradaha, the giver of power of vision to the eyes, the giver of power to the Surya. Who gives power to the Surya so that he can look after our vision? Pranasya pranaha, the vital force of the vital force is interesting. Pranasya mukyavayoho pranaha praneta, the promoter of even prana. So this is what was the question in Prashna Upanishad. The sixth question is what? That was the question. Okay, about what is the origin of prana and who controls prana is what the question was asked. At that time, people are the rishi said, Ati Prashnan, you asked a very good question. So that is what people are the says, the student, the rishi, when you ask him that, oh, I'm really happy you asked a very beautiful question. Pranasya pranaha. Pranasya mukyavayoho pranaha praneta. The promoter of even the prana. Okay, so that is the way, that is the introduction, the prelude to understanding this verse. Who gives power to the hearing? Who gives power to the mind? Who gives power to the vacha? By which you have to understand not the material stuff, but also the Abhimani Devatas that I have given in brackets here. Chandra, Rudra, Agni, Surya, Vayu. Who gave them the power? Because these guys are not independent. They are all dependent beings. Yeah. So we will finish today with this particular verse and we'll close today's session. Shrotrasya Shrotram Manasa Mano Yad Vachoha Vacham. And Chaturmukha said, Saha Vu Pranasya Prana. Okay, so every word there is important. Sa Vu Pranasya Prana. Savu. Okay, in Vedas, when you say Vu, Vu means Eva, only. Vu means only. Yeah. Sahavu Pranasya Pranaha. So Chaturmukha said, you know that Pranasya Pranaha, who is he? Sahavu. He alone is Pranasya Pranaha. So this is very, very beautiful because that is why I told you to think about the background to it about a few minutes ago. Chaturmukha Brahma is in the Vaijayanta mountain constantly contemplating on Narayana. And now he is saying, he alone is Pranasya Pranaha. Saha means he. Yeah, that is the meaning of in Sanskrit. Saha means he. U means eva, that is only. Okay, so he only is pranasya pranaha is what Chaturmukha Brahma says. So we as followers of this Kena Upanishad Sanatana Dharma, then we should ask who is he? Okay. When Chaturmukha is saying savu pranasya pranaha, so who is this he? Okay, so that becomes profoundly philosophical. Who is he? When Veda says saha, we just don't say he and then go. No, there is a deeper etymology of saha. Okay, so what is this saha? We'll close today's session by understanding what this saha is. So we know various Mimamsa Shastras, right? There is something called Karma Mimamsa, there is something called Devi Mimamsa, and there is something called Brahma Mimamsa. Here is a quick quiz. What is the other name for Brahma Mimamsa? When I say Brahma Mimamsa, what does it mean? Anybody who wants to answer that quick quiz?
Is it Uttara Mimamsa?
Beautiful, Anand. So Uttara Mimamsa means what?
The Vedantas.
Vedanta.
Brahma Sutra.
Brahma Sutra. Thank you, Prakashji. So Brahma Sutra is called Brahma Mimamsa. Okay. So you have Karma Mimamsa, Devi Mimamsa, and Brahma Mimamsa. So you have to go to the very first aphorism of the Brahma Sutra. What is the very first aphorism of Brahma Sutra? Om Om Atato Brahma Jignasa Om. So there was a question: who is this Brahman? What is the meaning of Brahman? Who is this Brahman? Of course, our Acharya says Brahma Shabdashta Vishnaveva. And at that point, he says Brahman means Vishnu, and he gives a lot of evidence to show why Brahman. Atato Brahma Jitnyasa. Then, therefore, inquiry into Brahman shall begin. That means, then, therefore, inquiry into Vishnu shall begin, is what Brahma Sutra says. Yeah. So, how is Brahman is Vishnu? Is the discussion there for those of us who are interested in this deeper level of contemplation. So the answer there, we have to go to something called Devi Mimamsa. You will soon understand why I am doing this. It sounds like a little out of syllabus, if you like, but it's directly related to what that Saha actually means. So Devi Mimamsa was actually composed by Paila and Sesha. These are the students of Badarayana. Yeah, and these guys composed the Devi Mimamsa, but the first sutra and the last sutra was composed by Veda Vyasa, their teacher. So in the first sutra, I said Om Atato Devi Mimamsa. Then in the last sutra, it said Sa Vishnur Ahahi is the last sutra of the Devi Mimamsa. Saha Vishnuhu Ahahi. And the Veda Vyasa said Saha Vishnu. Saha is Vishnu. Saha Vishnur Ahahi Om Atato Brahma Jignasa. Immediately he started Brahma Sutra then. Okay. So that is one evidence that Acharya gives to show that Vishnu Saha there or Brahma is Vishnu, because the last word of Devi Mimamsa was Saha Vishnu Rahahi Atato Brahma Jipnyasa. That Vishnu is Brahman. But the other interesting thing there is another word before Vishnu is Saha. Saha Vishnu Rahahi, that Saha is Vishnu. Why am I saying here? Savu pranasya pranaha. Vishnu is pranasya pranaha is the meaning there. And we need to understand by linking other areas of Shastras. And here is another beautiful thing that we understand. Akaya prasavi Sambhuma Sakaha Vishnuvachakaha. So this is also in the Shastras. There are a lot of secret names, secret and sacred names of Vishnu. Aha iti Brahma, Iteration Upanishad. Kaha, aha, kaha, akaya, pra, sa, vi, sam, bhu, bhuma, sakaha. So these are all Vishnu Vachakaha. So wherever Saha comes, it means it's Vishnu. Yeah. So what Chaturmukha is saying is that Shrotrasya Sotram, the one that gives power to the hearing and Chandra, Manasa Mano, the one that gives power to the mind and Rudra, Yad Vachoha Vacham, the one that gives power to the Vak and Agni, Vishnureva Pranasya Pranaha. So the pranasya pranaha is Vishnu only. Savu Vishnu eva pranasya pranaha. So in Anuvyakyana, Srimad Acharya talks about this very beautifully. So Vishnu rahahi tyante devashastrasya tenahi adyantam devashastrasya swayam bhagavata krutam. Go back to that verse, 81st line of Anuvyakyana that talks about who that Saha is. So if we extrapolate and bring it here, that Saha is Vishnuhu. Okay, so what Chaturmukha Brahma is teaching Rudra is about the Vishnu Tattva here. Okay, that is the key concept of Keno Upanishad. It's talking about that Vishnu Tattva, that the number 5 of the Vedic pantheon asks number 3, and the number 3 talks about the number 1, who is that Vishnu Tattva, Savu Pranasya Prana. Okay, so we will stop there. There is still so much to discuss about this Shrotrasya Shrotram Manasa Mano. Okay, we have to link it up with other Upanishad, Taittiriya Upanishad, and then there is a Brahma Sutra, Pranadayo Vakya Seshat. We have to bring that. Brihadaranyaka Upanishad talks exactly the same. Pranasya Pranam, Uta Chakshushas Chakshuhu, Shotratsya Shotram, Anyasya Annam Manaso Manaha. Same conversation of Brihadaranyaka Upanishad also says Pranasya Pranaha Uta Chakshushash Chakshuhu Uta Shrotrasya Shrotram Manaso Yena Mano Viduhu. So these are all the verses that comes in our Vedas, and our Sutrakara has done a Brahma Sutra Pranadayo Vakya Seshat, and he establishes who this person is and so on. So it's a beautiful way of contemplating of using Prasthanatrayas. We should never go outside this Sutra, other Upanishads and Gita, and understand what is this Pranasya Pranaha Tattva and so on. So we will take that up in great detail in the subsequent Chintana next week. So thank you so much for joining today. Krishna Pranamastu. If you have any further questions, now is the time to think about this. If not, we will catch up next week. Beautiful. So looks like we have no questions. So thank you so much again for joining us. I'm so pleased that we are back on track, and we will capture the deep spirit of Keno Upanishad next Sunday again, where we explore at various angles of the second mantra, and hopefully we'll complete the second mantra next week. Okay. So on that note, Krishna Pranamastu. May I request Anandji to recite Om, and we close today's Chintana.
Om.
Om. Thank you, Madhu.
Thank you very much. Krishna Pranamastu. Take care, everyone. See you next Sunday. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.